Biodome wasn't just a comedy disaster, it was a production that destroyed careers and reputations. Pauly Shore and Stephen Baldwin locked themselves in a fake biodome, while real Biosphere 2 scientists laughed at the chaos. The film scored 1 out of 100 on Metacritic. Alec Baldwin warned his brother it would ruin his career. And Tenacious D debuted in a massage circle. Here are 15 weird and surprising facts about Biodome. Fact 1. Biodome earned one of the lowest scores in Metacritic history, with a critic rating of 1 out of 100. It's currently tied as the 3rd worst reviewed movie ever on the site, behind only 2005's Chaos and 2018's Death of a Nation. That's not a typo, the score is literally 1. Every single mainstream critic savaged it. The Washington Post called it a non-stop marathon filled with poop and masturbation jokes destined to gross out and offend just about everyone. Entertainment Weekly gave it an F grade, saying, "Even with the low expectations any reasonable viewer brings to a Shore flick, this rates only stupid plus." The New York Times declared it inept in almost every respect. Rotten Tomatoes was equally brutal, giving Biodome a 4% approval rating. The consensus read that it was a dreadfully unfunny Pauly Shore vehicle whose obnoxious protagonists should remain separated from society. One critic wrote that Pauly Shore has a perverse talent to actively leave comedy less funny than when he found it. Business Insider ranked it the 3rd worst movie of all time. The film became a cautionary tale taught in film schools about how not to make a comedy. Fact 2. The producers originally wanted to film at the actual Biosphere 2 facility in Oracle, Arizona, but were denied permission by then-manager Steve Bannon. Yes, that's Steve Bannon, who later became Trump's campaign chief. Steve had been brought in to salvage the project's reputation after its disastrous first mission descended into chaos. When the producers approached him about using Biosphere 2 as a filming location, Bannon shut them down immediately. He told them bluntly, "We're not in the movie business, and we're focused on a very big effort here to turn around and legitimize the science and education program." Bannon was desperately trying to rebuild Biosphere 2's credibility as a legitimate research facility, and a Pauly Shore comedy was the last thing he needed. So instead, the production filmed at the Donald C. Tillman Water Reclamation Plant in Van Nuys, California, a sewage treatment facility with a Japanese garden. The plant had been used in dozens of other productions because its futuristic architecture made it look like a science facility. The irony is that filming a movie about ecological disaster at a sewage plant was probably more appropriate than anyone realized at the time. Fact 3. Alec Baldwin personally told his younger brother Stephen that accepting the role of Doyle in Biodome could end his acting career. Stephen had just come off the critical success of The Usual Suspects in 1995, where his performance as Michael McManus earned praise. He was being taken seriously as a dramatic actor for the first time. Then he signed on to Biodome. Alec reportedly called Stephen and told him he was making a catastrophic mistake that would destroy all the credibility he'd built up. He begged Stephen to back out of the project, even offering to help him find better scripts. Stephen refused and did the movie anyway. Alec was right. After Biodome bombed, Stephen Baldwin's career never recovered to its pre-Shore levels. He went from prestige films to direct-to-video action movies and reality TV. In interviews decades later, Stephen admitted that Biodome is the movie he's most recognized for, more than The Usual Suspects, more than anything else he's done. He spent years trying to get a Biodome sequel made, saying Pauly Shore is interested and he has funding, but no studio will touch it. Fact 4. Biodome opened at number 2 at the box office in January 1996, earning nearly $5 million its opening weekend. That sounds successful until you look at the budget. The film cost somewhere between $8.5 and $15 million to produce, depending on which source you believe, and it grossed only $13.4 million total at the domestic box office. Even with the generous $8.5 million budget estimate, the film barely broke even theatrically, and when you factor in marketing costs and theater splits, it definitely lost money. MGM reportedly lost millions on the project and refused to give the film any significant international release. It came and went from theaters in just a few weeks. The film did find a second life on home video among stoner comedy fans, but it was never profitable enough to justify the damage to everyone's careers. Motion Picture Corporation of America, the production company that financed it through a loan from Coots & Co., struggled financially after Biodome flopped. Pauly Shore's box office power evaporated overnight. After Biodome, he couldn't get another studio comedy greenlit for years, and eventually had to fund his his own movies. Fact 5.
Dependent upon homeostasis.
At the 1997 Golden Raspberry Awards, Pauly Shore won the Razzie for Worst Actor for his performance in Biodome, but he didn't win it alone. He tied with Tom Arnold, who somehow managed to be even worse across 3 different movies that year: Big Bully, Carpool, and The Stupids. Think about that. Tom Arnold was so bad in 3 separate films that he matched Pauly Shore's awfulness in just one. That's actually an impressive level of terrible. Shore was also nominated at the Stinkers Bad Movie Awards in the same category, but lost to Tom Arnold again for those same 3 movies. Biodome won 2 awards at the Stinkers Most Painfully Unfunny Comedy and Worst On-Screen Hairstyle for Stephen Baldwin's ridiculous bleached dreadlocks. The film was also nominated for Worst On-Screen Couple for Shore and Baldwin together, acknowledging that their combined presence was exponentially worse than either alone. Shore accepted his Razzie in person years later during a Razzie redemption ceremony, where he good-naturedly acknowledged that Biodome was terrible. He told the audience he'd rewatched it recently and understood why people hated it so much. Tom Arnold never showed up. Fact 6.
Don't say we didn't save some freaking trees!
Jack Black and Kyle Gass appear in Biodome as Tenacious D, performing at an environmental rally where attendees engage in a giant massage circle. It was their first appearance in a feature film as the comedy rock duo, and it lasted about 10 seconds of screen time. The scene shows Jack Black playing acoustic guitar while Kyle Gass backs him up during an Earth Day protest. They're dressed in hippie clothes and surrounded by eco-activists giving each other massages. It's such a brief appearance that most viewers don't even notice it's them, but Tenacious D fans have made the clip legendary online. Black has joked in interviews that Biodome helped launch his career by proving he could survive appearing in one of the worst movies ever made. If you can endure being in a Pauly Shore disaster and still have a career afterwards, you can survive anything Hollywood throws at you. The Tenacious D appearance is now the most rewatchable moment in the entire film. People who hate Biodome will specifically seek out that 10-second clip just to see Baby Jack Black before he became a superstar. It's the only part of the movie that hasn't aged terribly. Fact 7. 2 of the original Biosphere 2 scientists, Jane Poynter and Tabor McCallum, who lived sealed inside the real facility for 2 years, later watched Biodome and admitted they loved it. They said they laughed a lot during the screening because the chaos in the movie surprisingly mirrored their actual experience. Poynter and McCallum had expected that if anyone made a movie about their Biosphere 2 ordeal, it would be something serious like Total Recall, a dramatic science fiction film about space colonization. Instead, they got Pauly Shore and Stephen Baldwin destroying everything with juvenile pranks, but they found it weirdly accurate. The real Biosphere 2 experiment descended into complete disaster. Oxygen levels dropped dangerously low, food ran out, crew members split into hostile factions who stopped speaking to each other, and supplies had to be secretly smuggled in, compromising the entire sealed environment concept. By the end, the Biospherians had gone mad from isolation and starvation, so when Poynter and McCallum watched 2 idiots accidentally ruin a year-long ecological experiment, they recognized the absurdity. The comedy wasn't far from the reality. They just wished Biodome had been funny. Fact 8. While Biodome exaggerated everything for comedy, the script included shockingly accurate details from the real Biosphere 2 experiment. The film shows oxygen levels dropping, food shortages, arguments between crew members, a wealthy benefactor, a grandiose opening ceremony, and visitors kissing the glass from outside. All of that actually happened. The real Biosphere 2 cost $150 million to build and was funded by Ed Bass, a Texas oil heir. 8 scientists sealed themselves inside in 1991 for what was supposed to be a 2-year self-contained experiment. Within weeks, everything started going wrong. One scientist cut off her fingertip in an agricultural machine and had to leave for surgery, compromising the seal. When she returned, she brought a duffel bag full of supplies, which defeated the entire purpose of self-sustainability. Oxygen levels dropped from 21% to 14.2% because the concrete structure was leaching gases. They had to pump oxygen in from outside. Food crops failed. The crew split into 2 warring factions of 4 people each. By the end, they were barely speaking. One scientist wrote, "This is the only situation I have ever been in that would drive me to drink, except there is no drink in here." Fact 9. Because Steve Bannon refused permission to film at Biosphere 2, the production used the Donald C. Tillman Water Reclamation Plant in Van Nuys, California. It's literally a sewage treatment facility, but its distinctive Japanese garden and futuristic architecture have made it one of the most filmed locations in Los Angeles. The plant has appeared in over 100 films and TV shows, including episodes of 24, The X-Files, and Battlestar Galactica. Productions love it because it looks like a high-tech research facility or alien spacecraft, but it's actually where Los Angeles treats wastewater before releasing it back into the environment. So the crew spent weeks filming at a place that processes human waste, which feels metaphorically appropriate for Biodome's quality. Cast and crew members later joked that filming at a sewage plant perfectly captured what working on the movie felt like. Exterior shots were filmed at the real Biosphere 2 in Oracle, Arizona, to establish the location, but every interior scene where Bud and Doyle interact with the dome's ecosystems was shot at the reclamation plant. The contrast between the two locations is noticeable if you watch carefully. Fact 10.
Now let's try for 3 minutes.
Patricia Hearst, the heiress who was famously kidnapped by the Symbionese Liberation Army in 1974 and later convicted of bank robbery, appears in Biodome as Doyle's mother. It's a small role, she has maybe 3 lines, but it's one of the strangest celebrity cameos in 1990s comedy. Hearst had been trying to rebuild her acting career throughout the 1980s and 1990s after her prison sentence was commuted by President Carter. Director John Waters cast her in multiple films, and she was slowly getting mainstream roles again. Biodome represented her attempt to break into mainstream Hollywood comedies. Her appearance is completely random and unexplained. She shows up for one scene, delivers her lines, and disappears. Most viewers had no idea it was Patricia Hearst because she was playing such a throwaway character, but for people who recognized her, it was surreal watching one of the most infamous figures in American crime history playing Stephen Baldwin's suburban mom. Hearst has never publicly commented on her experience making Biodome, which suggests it wasn't a highlight of her career. She's probably relieved nobody remembers she was in it. Fact 11.
Thanks, girls. Now tell Bud and Doyle I'm writing a...
President Bill Clinton's half-brother Roger Clinton appears briefly in Biodome as a junior college professor. The cameo lasts maybe 10 seconds and is completely forgettable, but it represents one of the weirdest moments of 1990s celebrity culture when the president's brother was doing walk-on roles in terrible comedies for reasons nobody understands. Roger Clinton was attempting a music and acting career throughout the 1990s, trading heavily on his connection to Bill Clinton. He appeared in multiple low-budget films and TV shows, usually in tiny roles that seemed designed purely to put president's brother on the poster for marketing purposes. His appearance in Biodome came right when Bill Clinton was at peak popularity in 1996. Producers probably thought having Roger Clinton in the movie would generate publicity or controversy. It didn't. Nobody cared. Critics didn't even mention it in reviews. Roger Clinton's acting career never went anywhere, and he eventually became more famous for legal troubles and embarrassing headlines than for any actual work. His Biodome cameo remains one of the most pointless celebrity appearances in film history, which is perfect for Biodome. Fact 12.
Check it out. This is the event.
Rose McGowan has a small role in Biodome as Denise, a friend of the main character's girlfriends. She's 22 years old in the film, appearing in several scenes and delivering sarcastic commentary about how immature Bud and Doyle are. This was before she became famous as Tatum Riley in Scream, or as Paige Matthews on Charmed. McGowan was working steadily in small roles throughout the mid-1990s, taking any job that would pay. Biodome was not a career highlight, but it gave her screen time and helped her build connections in Hollywood. A year later, she landed Scream, which changed everything. In later interviews, McGowan has been asked about Biodome exactly 0 times because nobody wants to remind her she was in it. It doesn't appear in her official filmography highlights, and she's never mentioned it in any memoir or public discussion of her career. The film is an embarrassment even for the supporting cast who had tiny roles. But for film nerds who like tracking celebrity origins, seeing young Rose McGowan in a Pauly Shore disaster is fascinating. She's clearly talented even in terrible material, which explains why she survived Biodome and went on to actual success. Fact 13. In 2013, Stephen Baldwin said in an interview that Biodome is the movie people recognize him from most often, more than The Usual Suspects, more than anything else in his entire career. He gets stopped on the street and people yell "Doyle" at him or quote lines from Biodome constantly. This drives Baldwin crazy because The Usual Suspects won 2 Academy Awards and is considered one of the greatest crime thrillers ever made, while Biodome is universally regarded as one of the worst comedies ever filmed. But more people have seen Biodome because it played endlessly on cable TV and became a cult favorite among stoners. Baldwin has spent years trying to get a Biodome sequel made, claiming he and Pauly Shore have developed a script about their characters' children getting stuck in a biodome. He's said multiple times that he has funding and Shore is interested, but no studio will greenlight it. The fact that Baldwin desperately wants to make Biodome 2, despite the original being a career-killing disaster, tells you everything about where his career ended up. He went from Oscar-winning prestige films to begging for a Pauly Shore sequel. Fact 14.
All right, now everybody, do not be...
Director Jason Blum, in his defense of Biodome, argued that he actually made the scientists and their experiment look much more legitimate and focused on real science than they were in real life. This is an astonishing claim, given how incompetent the movie's scientists appear. In Biodome, the scientists are portrayed as dedicated researchers conducting important ecological work who get sabotaged by 2 morons. Bloom claimed this was generous compared to reality, where the actual Biosphere 2 scientists were described by critics as acting along the lines of a cult and conducting an experiment that was not scientifically valid as it could not be repeated. The real Biosphere 2 was organized by members of the Theater of All Possibilities, an experimental theater troupe, not trained scientists. They literally performed a comedy play called The Wrong Stuff before, sealing themselves inside, making fun of everything that could go wrong. Then, everything actually went wrong. So Bloom's defense that his movie portrayed the science as more legitimate than reality is technically correct, but it's damning with faint praise. If your disaster comedy is more scientifically rigorous than the real-life experiment it's based on, something went very wrong. Fact 15. While 2 of the original Biospherians laughed at Biodome, Biosphere 2's manager at the time of the film's release, Wallace Smith Broker, was furious. He called the movie a step in the wrong direction and publicly criticized it for damaging the facility's reputation just as they were trying to rebuild credibility. Brucker had taken over management after the disasters of the first and second missions, and he was desperately attempting to turn Biosphere 2 into a legitimate research institution. Columbia University had leased the facility and was conducting actual scientific experiments. Then, Biodome came out and undid all his work. The movie cemented Biosphere 2 in the public consciousness as a joke rather than serious science. Whenever people heard about the facility, they thought of Pauly Shore and Stephen Baldwin destroying ecosystems, not legitimate ecological research. Broker blamed Hollywood for making his job impossible. Today, Biosphere 2 is owned by the University of Arizona and operates as a respected research center studying climate change and ecology. But it took decades to overcome the damage from both the original disasters and the Pauly Shore movie. The facility's Wikipedia page now lists Biodome under a section about cultural impact and embarrassment. So there you have it, 15 weird and surprising facts about Biodome. From Metacritic's lowest scores to Steve Bannon's involvement, this comedy disaster left destruction in its wake that's still being felt today. If you learned something new, hit that like button and subscribe for more movie facts.